أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. As all of you are well aware now that if Allah wills, if God wills, inshallah, myself and two other brothers from our community will be joining a contingency of other brothers from various parts of the UK, where we'll be visiting refugee camps in the border of Jordan and Syria. And there are people there who are fleeing persecution, fleeing injustice. Many of them will have lost their loved ones. Some will be orphans. Some won't have their parents with them. Parents won't have their children with them. So there'll be a real mixture of people that will be hopefully meeting there to try and assist them in whatever way we can. And they are called refugees because they've been made to flee from their home. They've left their home, whether it's in Syria or whatever else globally people may be. When you've been made to leave your home, you've been made to flee persecution, it's actually very prophetic. It's very prophetic to be, in a sense, being forced to leave your house. We don't have to worry about that because we live in a country that's relatively safe and secure. And so we don't have to worry about leaving the comfort of our homes, property that we've perhaps invested a lot of money and energy into purchasing. And we have our security. We don't need to worry about, being bombarded or being alienated or being killed. Our children, when they go to school, we know they, inshallah, will come home safely. When they go to madrasa, when they go out to play, they are in a safe environment. And that's a great gift for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we live in that comfort. These people don't have that comfort. They've experienced, and many of them, because of the length of the war, will have only known conflict. They won't have known stability. They won't have been able to benefit from education or having a stable job like me and you have. So we have a lot to be grateful for. And so they've been made to make hijrah from their homes to these camps, which are in many cases very uncomfortable places for them. And I want to raise the idea that this idea of hijrah, which is what the Prophet ﷺ did as well. He was persecuted by the people in his very home, in his very community, who didn't like or weren't ready to accept or willing to accept the truth of the message that the Prophet, peace be upon him, brought to them. And it was a very simple message. It was to believe in Allah and to follow the way of the chosen messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But people chose not to accept the Prophet, not to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They wanted to place Allah with a panoply, a collection of other gods, which is shirk. And the Prophet said, no, we can't do this. We can't negotiate on this because there can only be one creator, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so they attempted to assassinate him. And that is when Allah informed him, or he was informed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he must make the hijrah. So hijrah is a story that's very interesting. The idea of leaving Makkah and Medina, going to a place of persecution and starting a new home in Madinatul Munawwara, because the Prophet ﷺ began a new home, right, a new community, and that's where Islamic civilization really took off, from that humble place, that oasis town where people historically would just stop to rest and maybe get some water for their animals and then move on with their journey. But Allah had decreed that that was going to be the Madinatul Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. From there, thousands upon millions would come out and spread the religion of Islam. And when you were reading the history, you would say, well, if the Prophet is being made to leave his home, where is he going to go next? What's going to happen with him? Who's going to look after him, right? But we see, because we have the benefit of history, we look back, we're not looking forward. When we look back, we say, oh, actually, that was a really good move. But imagine the iman of Abu Bakr and the companions who left all of their comforts, who left all of their homes, their belongings, their families, and they entered into a community which was alien to them, which was different to their community. And the community welcomed them. They were hospitable to them, generally speaking. And then the Prophet ﷺ was allowed to flourish. So in our life, sometimes we have to leave things. Right? This is the message. Sometimes we have to leave things because often we become attached to material things. Right? We love our job so much. We love this house so much. We love that so much. And then sometimes we have to leave that. And then people get upset. and people get, they naturally feel a little bit of sadness. But later on, when something else happens in their life, they're like, oh, now I see the benefit of that. So this is the way of the Prophet ﷺ. It's not unique to him. This is Abrahamic. If you look at the example of Ibrahim ﷺ, the father of monotheism, Ibrahim Hanifa Muslima, he was one who was inclined to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he submitted to Allah. And so the Prophet traces his lineage back to Ibrahim ﷺ, and from there you have Isa, then there you have Musa ﷺ. Even Musa had to make hijrah, and sometimes you have to pay the ultimate price, which is your life. Prophets were also killed by people who weren't willing to accept them. So hijrah, we should not just think of it as a geographical thing, as just moving from one land to another. It's a spiritual thing. Now sometimes Allah wants us to think about Him and not to be engrossed in the material aspects that we often get attached to. Our cars, our jobs, our iPhones, our Netflix, so whatever else people get really bonded to. And that's where sadness really lies, because what happens when people get attached to material objects, their heart is not willing to let go, and when they lose those things or they become damaged, they get really angry and upset. But it's just an object. It has no material. Beyond being a material object, it has no spiritual benefit for you, right? But what Allah wants us to do is to move away from the dust, because we are created from dust. But what made it special? It wasn't a dust that made it special. It was a divine breath that made it special. Allah breathed into us. وَنُفِخَ فِيهِ مِن رُوحِهِ. So you were just like Adam as-salam, who is the prototype, was just, like I say to my daughters, he was just dust, sand, right? And Allah elevated you by giving you that divine breath. So you have this divine quality, if you like, within you. But what happens is, because we're created from dust, we start going back to dust. We incline to materials, materialism, which is like the order of the day. The modern society, it's all about material. How much more can you accumulate? And happiness will never lie in there, because you always want more. You get a promotion, well, you need to get another promotion. Oh, great, you've met your target this year. Well, can you increase your target now? Right? And continuously they keep that. And then that leads to other externalities like anxiety, mental health issues, all of these things, because happiness does not lie in these material things. Happiness lies in the immaterial, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is pre-eternal, qadeem, right? He is the one He has breathed into you this ruh, and the ruh, which is the internal beauty, is eternal, because it comes from the eternal. Can you see? And so we are obsessed with external beauty. And of course, there's nothing wrong with looking beautiful, by the way. So don't come tomorrow to the masjid and looking all tired and exhausted. No, there's nothing wrong with looking beautiful. It's part of our tradition. Our masjids, our institutions should be beautiful places. Inna Allah Jameel yuhibbul Jamal. We have a book that I've left somewhere here, which talks about the spiritual significance of Islamic architecture. Right? So architecture is part of our tradition, but it comes from the divine beauty. So while we are obsessed with Instagram and these images of doing things to our body so that we can find some sort of happiness, that will never really lead you to happiness, because real happiness and eternal happiness lies in the heart, which is something, the ruh, which will carry you into the afterlife. When you open up a grave, when you dig up a grave, all you see is dust, all you see is bones. But the ruh, which is something that's immaterial, right? It doesn't have a material existence. That is something that we should be craving for, right? So this hijrah is to remind us the Prophet ﷺ made this hijrah. And of course, when he was leaving Makkah, he looked back as a human being at the city where he was born, at that place that was home, for all that job that we love, that thing that we love. And then he said, look, I love this place, but I had to make hijrah to Madinatul Munawwara. And then from there, Allah gave him success. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا. You're going to see people flocking to your religion. Literally armies are going to be entering your religion. So hijrah is part of our life. So these people have made hijrah, the refugees in Syria, Jordan, wherever else it may be. And so we are all refugees in some ways. We are all people who are living in this world, because this world is not really for us to stay in. Just like a refugee, that world wasn't really for them. That's in a worldly sense, but in a spiritual sense, we're all refugees. The moment you start thinking this world is yours and you're going to live here forever, then you're going to have all the problems, right? Then you're going to have issues, because you're attached to the world. So when the angel of death comes, which is inevitable for all of us, and he says, right, it's time to go, you're going to be so attached to the world that your ruh, your soul, is going to be dragged out of your body, which is going to be painful. What the Mashaykh tell us, that's what's going to happen, because you're so attached, we are so engrossed in the materiality of the world that materiality is holding us from connecting to God. But those people who can do it in the world, who are not interested as such, but connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Please, I have the space here as well. Make some space. Join this. Who are interested in the immaterial, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ have told us that their ruh, they'll feel a little bit of pain, but their soul will come out like water comes out of a jug. Because they're ready to go. Because they've realized what is immaterial. Allah is immaterial. So we need to also think about this as people who live in a culture where it's all about buying more and more, right? That's how the economy works. You keep buying, keep selling, keep buying. Whether you need that object or not, right? It's just that consumption, because that's what keeps the machine working. But for Muslims, we have to slow down and think about, well, do we really need to buy this? Do I really need this right now, right? Is this something that I want, or is it something that I need? There's a difference between wanting and needing something. So this hijrah that the Prophet ﷺ did, and we are all muhajirin in some ways, we are all people who are refugees, right? And it's very interesting because when we think of ourselves as people who are not here forever, we're just traveling to our final home, which is Jannah, which is where we came from, by the way, right? And that's why, you know, when Adam ﷺ was made to come down, he wasn't kicked out of Jannah. That's a theological point. We don't believe that he was kicked out of Jannah because we don't believe in original sin. Adam ﷺ did not commit a sin, and neither do we have that burden of him. In the Western Christian tradition, they say it's his fault, right? And so we are all born with this original sin, and then Jesus came and he died for us. And we don't believe in that. Everyone's born pure. I talk about this in our Fitra lectures, right? So we are from Adn, we are from Eden, we are from Jannah, right? And that's where our real place is. So we're just here as refugees. We're going back to the ultimate place, which is Jannah. Can you see? So it's a circular movement for us. So we're all refugees. They're material, they might be worldly refugees, but we are also refugees in this world. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, in a beautiful hadith once says that the whole dunya has been made a masjid for you, right? So that wherever you are, you know, this place is Allah's house. You can do ibadah wherever you want, right? And that's a beautiful hadith which conceptualizes this idea that we don't need to, you know, we're believers wherever we are. You could be in America, you can be in Saudi, you can be in Mauritius, you can be wherever you are a believer on this planet. Islam is not about, oh, you can only be a believer in a certain place, because belief is something that you carry with you. Iman is something that you have in your heart and nobody can take that away from you. It's something that's in there, immaterial again, because it's something that you have within you. So we are all in a deep sense refugees, and while we are able to assist these brothers and sisters in Syria, Jordan, and wherever else it may be, really we are helping ourselves. And this is the second point I want to make, that while we are giving money to them, we're giving whatever we can to them, really we're helping ourselves, because Allah will take care of them. Allah will take care of them, and they are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they are the downtrodden and they are the ones who are at the receiving end of injustice. But me and you who have wealth, whether you accept it or not, I'm not rich. Well, you're rich compared to most of the world's population. Let me tell you that much, right? And so we are helping ourselves by helping them, that we're feeling their pain. We're removing this attachment to money, materialism again, because one of the benefits of giving charity is that it's a proof that you're not attached to money, because money doesn't belong to me and you anyway. If I give you £10, if you give me £10, ultimately it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you know, often when you see Muslim brothers and sisters fighting over money, you know, you find it in a grand scheme of things, you find it ludicrous, right? So this is this idea that when we are helping them, in reality we are helping ourselves. We are making our hisab on their qiyamah heavier in our books with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as we, and inshallah some of us will be leaving inshallah Monday morning, and it's a burden for us because we have our own responsibilities, but we will try our best to fulfill this responsibility inshallah. And like I said, this will also bring barakah back to our communities inshallah. I really believe in this. Like when you bond like this, Allah will bring barakah back to our communities, back to our homes, because that money is never wasted. Whatever you do for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, only for His sake, will never be wasted. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Allah accept all of us in this world and also in the akhirah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Jazakallah.